I thought it was a joke until she set her glass down and said, clear and cold enough to fog the room, "Your turn's over. He's with me now." My wife didn't blush. She emptied. The laughter dimmed like a dimmer someone twisted too far. And in the silence that followed, I realized I had been living next to a stranger I loved. If you're listening to this, you probably know the minute. People think heartbreak is a season. It isn't. It's a timestamp you can't stop checking. Mine reads 10:37 p.m. on a Friday, in a kitchen crowded with people who came to admire Blacksback's tile and left with a story to repeat in whispers. The moment wasn't cinematic. It was sterile, fluorescent, too bright to feel real. A sentence can turn a room into an operating theater. Your turn's over. That's all it took. But let me back up, because context is where the polite lies live. My name is Adam, and I used to describe myself as steady, equal parts patient and boring, which sounds like an apology until someone's crisis turns you into a rock and they cling to you like a lifeboat. She called that steadiness my halo once. We were still honest with each other then, before honesty became something you weaponize by defining it more narrowly than the hurt. We met at a summer street fair under string lights and sugar dust. Serena was at a candle stall, comparing scents with the concentration of a jeweler. She told the vendor salted figs smelled like a memory of a kiss, and I laughed because it was pretentious and because I knew exactly what she meant. She turned, clocked me, and smirked. "You look like a man who organizes his socks by day of the week." I said I didn't. I lied. She kissed me later anyway, quick and startling, like she didn't want to give me time to ruin it by overthinking. Our life assembled itself like a good playlist, songs that don't make sense until playing together. A cheap apartment with a view of nothing good and everything ours. Nights of noodle dinners and mornings of coffee that we convinced ourselves was artisanal. Inside jokes like private handshakes. A backyard wedding with crooked chairs and friends in mismatched pastels. We were proud of our promise because we built it ourselves out of plain wood and a willingness to stay. Red flags? They weren't flags. They were confetti. Little colored pieces that looked like celebration until you realized they were covering a stain. She started coming home late and calling it flow, like the creative force was a river that didn't respect clocks. She joined a new gym and talked about it like a church revival. She locked her phone and said, "I just want to be present when I'm with you." The passcode changed. The filters sharpened. Her laugh got brighter in rooms that didn't have me in them. When I noticed and said, gently, "I feel left behind," she kissed my forehead and called me her favorite cynic. "Work's eating you," she said. "You're seeing hunger everywhere. You want to know when you were wrong to stop trusting yourself? It's always earlier than you want to admit." Serena loved parties. She inhaled attention the way some people smell rain on pavement, nostalgic, reverent, hungry. She wasn't cruel about it. She just brightened when eyes found her. I thought that was charisma. I didn't realize it was oxygen. My stability plus her sparkle made a balanced equation on paper. But people aren't math. We are weather. And then there was Tessa. If friend groups have an axis, she was ours. Caring, ruthless, the kind who would shove you into a cab when you needed rescuing and drag you into the truth when you needed humbling. She carried hair ties, bandages, the passwords you forgot, and the secrets you pretended were safe. She and Serena were close in the way that makes you grateful your wife has a witness and uneasy that someone else knows her better than you sometimes do. A few months before the night everything split, Tessa started seeing a guy named Marco. He had a grin like a gym mirror and a body language that said he'd been told he was charming and had decided to agree. He shook your hand with two hands and touched your back like he didn't understand the concept of personal space because he'd never had to. If this sounds like contempt, that's hindsight warming itself. At the time, I thought, he makes Tessa laugh. He'll be temporary. He'll be a story she tells the group one day, a "do you remember" with eye rolls. Our neighbor invited us to a housewarming. New countertops, old resentments, people who barely knew each other pretending not to judge. The kitchen, as always, became the capital. Serena floated into it late, in a dress that glowed a little, her hair pinned like an invitation to mess it up later. She kissed me on the cheek, then the mouth, like a punctuation mark. Then she let the room redirect her orbit. Tessa arrived in black satin and purpose. Marco slid in behind, cologne and confidence, and the easy way extroverts make strangers feel chosen. He hugged Serena longer than polite. She hugged back. My stomach registered it as data without assigning a meaning. You know how betrayal actually starts? Not with hotel keys or dark alleys, with a hand on an elbow, with a laugh that lasts a beat too long, with "you're bad" said approvingly, with "I can't, I shouldn't, okay, 5 minutes." If you're waiting for something cinematic, neon signs, thunder, you'll miss the small weather patterns that predict the storm. The timestamp lives in me, so here it comes again. 10:37 p.m. Tessa's jaw is set in a way that would be sexy if it weren't loaded. She stands. Her phone glows in her palm, then goes dark, like it delivered a final prophecy and retired. She walks to the bar cart where Serena is laughing at something Marco has said that I will never know, because whatever it was no longer matters. Tessa sets her glass down with surgeon steadiness. No theatrics, no raised voice. Just a silver cord of a sentence stretched tight across the room. Your turn's over. He's with me now. The crowd does what crowds do. Air gets thinner, conversations die mid-sentence. A phone adjusts in a hand, screen tilting to frame without being obvious. People love live theater when they haven't paid for tickets. Serena does not flush. She doesn't cry. She enters the oldest defense: freeze. Pupils widen, muscles lock micro-tensed, like a hunted animal gambling that stillness can make a predator's eyes slide past. Fight or flight get all the press, but freeze is a biological ancient. An obedience to danger so primal it feels like dignity until you thaw. What? She says, but she isn't asking. She's stalling time. Tessa doesn't blink. You told me you were done. You told me he was just a story, a taste. Consider yourself full. My body moves before my brain catches up. I drift closer, pretending I need ice, pretending control. My hand is steady, the way doctors' hands learn to be steady. The steadiness is a lie my blood tells my bones. I say, "What's going on?" very softly, because people like me don't raise our voices until the building's already on fire. Two heads turn. One is Tessa's, hot with purpose. The other is Serena's, pale and calculating, already choosing a narrative that will hurt least when it fails. Tessa breaks the seal. Adam, she's been with Marco, off and on, months. She told me it was nothing, that it didn't count when it was just flirting. Then it didn't count because it was only once. Then it counted, but she swore it ended. It didn't. You can feel your heart do something it was never designed to do, split into past and present in a single beat. One half thumps in the scene where your life was fine. The other pounds in this fluorescent kitchen with its artisanal olives and the smell of old decisions igniting. I keep my voice even because I don't know how to be anything else. Is that true? Serena reaches for me with the worst word. Babe. A stranger would start with my name. She recalibrates. Adam. She looks at me, looks away, looks back like the room is a mirror maze and she's trying to find us. It was stupid. We kissed. It was back then. It's not. She glances at Tessa, reads the weather, reroutes. Nothing is happening now. Marco tries for contrition and lands on performance. Bro? He stops at Tessa's stare, edits. Adam, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have. 6 times, Tessa says, almost bored, as if listing grocery items. At least. 40 minutes across town because your gym is too crowded for confessions, including the night you told me your phone died. She raises her phone and shows me what I already believe but still need to see. Uber receipts. A corner of a mirror in a photo of a hallway that is unmistakably Serena's studio, reflected in the lock screen. A smartwatch alert. Elevated heart rate, unusual for 10:58 p.m. A map with a little blue dot that knew too much. 2 shadows leaving a door, careful to create space. The choreography of people who want plausible deniability more than they want each other. I discover there's a pitch to breathing you don't hear until you have to relearn it. In, out, around a pointy thing lodged under the ribs. Did you love him? I ask, because I know it's the wrong question, and I need it anyway. No. Her answer is immediate and honest in the exact way that misses the point. God, no. It was adrenaline. It was a rush. It was feeling like the version of me I used to be before we settled. She hates the word as she says it. It wasn't about you. Everything is about me. Everything is about us. That's the cruelty of betrayal. The actor thinks they're performing in a solo project. The broken heart knows it was always a duet and it died mid-song. Stop, Tessa says. Please don't turn him into your alibi. She looks at me with a kind of sorority and sorrow I don't know how to absorb. I thought she was done. That's on me. I believed a story because I wanted my story to be clean. Serena tries a tactic the internet calls gentle gaslighting. You've been distant, she tells me soft, like a mother asking a child to agree. Work has you. We hardly... I let out a laugh I don't recognize. We hardly is a terrible way to tell the truth, I say, and it feels like the first real sentence I've spoken in months. The party resumes in jittery whispers. The story splits into many smaller stories, each carried home by someone who will tell it wrong. I take my keys out because I've seen enough movies to know this is where the steady man leaves before he breaks a glass or a jaw. I walk out past a mirrored console table that reflects me as a man I do not want to be. Patient, embarrassed, still. The next day, we do the next day things. She cries until her voice is sand. I make coffee I don't drink and stare at a mug like it might tell me what to do. When she reaches for my hand, I let her. I'm not generous, I'm in shock. The heart forgives for a few hours to keep you alive. The texts arrive like a second sunrise that blinds. Tessa sends a folder with an apology that refuses to soothe. There are messages between Serena and Marco that read like a manual for how to dismantle something sacred with plausible deniability. Just flirting, she wrote. A week later, just once. A week after that, we said we'd stop. Then, okay, but I can't sleep without your voice. Then, he made dinner tonight. I feel like a monster. Then, 2 hours later, can you come over? If you've never tasted cognitive dissonance, imagine a coin under your tongue that never dissolves. You think you're a good person, your actions don't match. You have to choose which to kill, your story or your behavior. She kept choosing behavior and calling it a story. That's the loop shame loves. The hurt makes you reach for the thing that hurt you so you can feel bad enough to confirm what you already feared. We go to therapy. The waiting room has ferns and a magazine from 3 months ago. The therapist says words like rupture and repair and makes them sound like carpentry instead of soft tissue. She tells me my hypervigilance is not me becoming controlling, it's my nervous system standing guard after being ambushed. She tells Serena that explanation is not exoneration, that we were in a bad place is a setting, not a reason. She draws attachment diagrams, secure, anxious, avoidant, and Serena's eyes fill when avoidant is described like a haunted house, doors that open and slam in the same breath. Her father cheated like it was a hobby and apologized like it was an art. We learn how scripts you hate still live in you like bone. The therapist explains freeze. She tells Serena it wasn't cowardice, it was protection. She tells me that the brain hates contradictions so much it will rewrite a memory to make us look more consistent than we are. She warns us that reconciliation is a marathon that ends with 2 people who both sprinted alone. We separate anyway. Not that day, not with drama, with boxes. Half a closet on a Tuesday. The dog looks back and forth like a judge who doesn't want this job. We can be careful with each other, Serena says, as we label cables in a Ziploc bag. We can be kind. And later, she doesn't finish. The later hangs between us like a chandelier we can't afford to fix. Friends do what friends do. Some vanish, afraid secrets are contagious. Some pick a side and call it loyalty. Some try to mediate, not understanding mediation requires 2 honest narratives, not one honest person and one person who is still auditioning for the part of herself she likes. Someone posts a vague story about betrayal and snakes. The comments think it's about them. I log off. People ask about revenge like it's dessert. I thought about it. I thought about telling her mother, telling her boss, telling the group chat, printing the texts on t-shirts, returning him to Tessa like you return a broken appliance with a receipt. But revenge has a half-life that eats you first. It's a second job where the pay is an ulcer. Someone caught a few seconds of the party. Of course they did. A blurred clip surfaces in a neighborhood group, then it migrates to somewhere the young go to teach the old about consequences. Some say I should leave. Some say it was just a kiss. Some say Tessa is a hero. Some say she is petty. Social media is a court without a judge, just 1,000 jurors who didn't see jury selection. I stop reading because my nervous system doesn't need more spectators. She writes me a letter. Paper, ink, the old way. I don't want to be this person, she says. I thought attention was love. I thought being wanted meant being worth something. I got addicted to applause and tried to make our kitchen feel like a stage. I want to fix what's broken in me, even if I never get to show you the fixed version. It's the most honest thing she's ever given me. I fold it carefully and put it in a drawer that also holds warranties and programs from weddings that didn't last. The practical matters taste like metal. A lawyer explains that in our state, fault doesn't matter when dividing a life. Numbers and forms and signatures make this heartbreak look professional. We have no children, an accident of timing that feels like mercy dressed as emptiness. We talk about the dog like diplomats. We choose a schedule. We pretend we invented maturity. The nights alone are a specific quiet. I learn the choreography of cooking for one, how to crack an egg without wishing for 2 plates. I buy a plant and keep it alive with the reverence of a monk. I take laps around the block like I'm patrolling a border. My friends take me to a lake where silence feels like a clean cloth. We sit, and the not talking says more than the talking ever did. Later, at dusk, I finally say it out loud, and it lands less like a confession and more like a weather report. She cheated. The trees do not react. This is both insulting and liberating. Serena keeps going to therapy. She sends me proof at first, appointment reminders, a workbook with the cover half in frame, a screenshot of a calendar where EMDR sits like an acronym you can climb into and get out of whole. I tell her I believe her, without evidence. I tell her I need to heal without updates. The hardest part for her is not using remorse as a seduction technique. The hardest part for me is not using anger as a personality. Tessa and I talked twice. She wanted to save me that night, she says, or she wanted to make sure I wasn't the last to know, or she wanted to make her pain a noun in a room that kept trying to whisper it into adjective. She says the line she used, "your turn's over," was something Serena once said to her as a joke when they were young and cruel with hormones. We weren't laughing this time, she says. I tell her I don't know whether what she did was right. She says she doesn't either. We are both telling the truth. Marco recedes, the way men like him do, into a crowd of other men with other grins. He texts me once, a slab of words weighs too late, and I do not reply. He is not the story I need to tell myself to survive. I think a lot about competition, about how women, especially, are trained by a culture that hands out praise like a bouquet with too few flowers in it. About how the friend you should be able to trust becomes the person you're measured against, and how men like Marco become trophies in games no one remembers entering. I think about Serena's need to be watched, and how my love of privacy felt to her like rejection. How 2 people can fail to translate kindness in each other's language and call it destiny. In the mornings, I run the same route and count the same cracks in the sidewalk. Predictability becomes a comfort I never respected until chaos moved in. When I pass a gym, I feel stupid, and then I let the feeling go. Shame is a costume. It doesn't fit me anymore. You want me to say whether we stayed together. We didn't. Not for lack of trying. She tried to understand the wound she carried into us. I tried to stop asking every new kindness for a receipt. But there is a kind of break that, once sealed, is still visible. You can keep watering the cracked cup and applaud the flower and ignore the way your hands get cut. Or you can put it down. 6 months after the party, Serena emails. Not a letter this time, a neutral subject line. Coffee? She writes that she's sorry in a way that is not theatrical and therefore is the only way I finally believe it. She says, I am different. I believe her. I do. But I also believe that the version of me who survived that night would be putting himself back in a house with a fire still under the floorboards. I tell her I hope her therapist knows the name of the place inside her that claps when someone looks at her and says she is doing a good job. I tell her mine taught me that quiet can be a love language too, that leaving is not always an attack. Sometimes it's a border you draw because you finally respect your own country. I tell her no. If you were watching this, if you were listening in a dark room with a light on your face, I'd ask you what you'd do. Would you forgive? Would you prosecute? Would you vanish and build a life in a city where no one remembers your previous mistakes? There isn't a right answer that fits everyone. There is only the answer that leaves you living the way you want to be remembered by your own memory. I don't want to be remembered as the man who punished to feel powerful. I want to be remembered, by myself, as the man who told the truth and left when the truth wasn't enough to make it safe. Sometimes people ask me what moment I think about most when I think of her now. Not the party, not the freeze. There's a Tuesday I love. We were unpacking after our tiny wedding. She pulled a frying pan out of a box like it was treasure and put it on her head like a helmet, and I laughed in a way that made the dog bark. "We did it," she said. "We made a little home." That was true. That matters. You don't have to burn the photographs to survive. You can keep a few on a shelf and teach yourself to look at them without bleeding. And sometimes I remember the line too, not because it was cruel, but because it was accurate in a way I finally made useful. Your turn's over. Not as a punishment, not as a child being told to share, but as a benediction that sent me into the after. Your turn in the life where you believed attention was love? Over. Your turn in the life where steadiness meant you stopped asking for the adventure of being seen? Over. That night, she froze, and I, slowly, stubbornly, thawed. It takes months for a body to stop expecting the door to open. Then it does. It opens on a day you're filling the dog's water bowl and humming a song no one taught you. You turn, and the room is just a room, not a stage, not a crime scene. You breathe, and it's just breath, not a performance. You notice that no one is clapping, and you don't miss it. You make coffee with your own hands, and it tastes like something you chose. The last time I saw Serena in person was at a crosswalk. We both paused like pedestrians in a movie about fate. She smiled in that way that used to make me forgive the next thing before it happened. We shared a small nod, a tiny peace treaty. The light changed. We walked. What do I want you to take from this, besides the voyeuristic thrill you're embarrassed to admit? Take this. If it feels like a stage, it's probably someone else's show. If you are telling yourself that your stability is boring, ask who taught you chaos is romance. If you hear the sentence, "it didn't mean anything," remember that meaning is not a shield against damage. A bullet doesn't mean anything either, and it still kills. If someone freezes in front of you, know that's an ancient alarm, and the only respectful thing to do is lower your volume. I don't believe in perfect villains or perfect victims. We were human, and then we were too human, and then we were a cautionary tale at a party. She, in therapy, is trying. I, in Mornings by a Lake, am mending. Tessa set down a glass and a bomb at the same time. Marco, somewhere, is practicing a smile. I don't need to monitor that anymore. My life is not a security camera. The room where it happened? Renovated, probably. The neighbors upgraded the backsplash. People still gather there and pick at artisanal olives and tell stories they shouldn't tell. Somewhere, someone says something that quiets a crowd. Somewhere, a marriage survives the second act. Somewhere else, someone listens to the oldest internal whisper, "Leave," and answers it. If you need permission, here it is. Your turn at hurting yourself to protect someone else's comfort is over. Your turn at calling love a spotlight is over. Your turn at silencing your gut because someone else calls it paranoia is over. The night the sentence dropped into the center of my life, it sounded like a verdict. It took months to hear it as a kind of blessing. Your turn's over. Now, finally, mine began.